Hi, this is Gaurav Suman. Imagine the day when the alert you get on Slack is something like this, which is line two is sliding down the throughput scale. I can issue a work order. The system is standing up for you and offering help. It is able to discover the issue and also offer some action. Think of a VP operations, a VP finance who's thinking about margins of the facility they manage, and they are being offered this this remedial plan, or in fact reminded that they need a remedial plan, right? So something like this is exciting and perhaps more possible now than ever before thanks to agentic communication capabilities. We'll talk about how that can come to life in a second, but the reality is that those kind of alerts, um, they need a massive IT OT divide to be bridged. Enough has been said on that topic. Reality remains. There is 200, 300 different protocols, multiple vendors, systems. People have their own specific areas and silos in industrial environments. And what we are seeing a lot is sort of full stack solutions where the risk is you end up getting locked into a specific platform if you want those insights, right? Yes, there might be today the possibility of getting a very eloquent answer, a way which was not possible before, but the risk is you are tying yourself into that stack. So the complexity is not just about this, but also what the future looks like given today's realities, right? So if you zoom out, right, and the perspective I want to offer here is of a certain framework, right? Let's just call it an industrial framework of the agentic kind. And what's grounding this whole thing is a foundation that recognizes we'll have to do some operations on data before it becomes usable by the agentic AI systems. And this is where you standardize the chaos. You're bringing in data from a variety of different sources, some old, some new. Europe might use different technology versus the US, things along those lines. The second sort of piece to this puzzle is the mesh where systems speak with each other. Of course, there is data and events which has to get around, but now we are talking about really a nervous system that has to have the ability to coordinate. And what are we coordinating? We are coordinating specialist capabilities and call them agents in this case. We'll look at some examples in a bit, which could be then using their respective choice of LLMs or tools like MCP to go deep into a third-party platform and operate with great efficiency, great impact. And as we look towards the future, of course, you have possibilities like lights out factory and so on, but the reality remains there's a lot of infrastructure already. People have massive deployments where there is enough value to already be unlocking. But then moving forward, of course, there's exciting possibilities around pricing, maintenance decisions, and what have you. So what I'm showing you now is a way to sort of visualize all these pieces coming together. So let's begin at the bottom. Um, I spoke about the grounding of the data. So think of a data ops platform which helps bring in variety of different endpoints, helps normalize that data so it can be modeled, or vice versa. The modeling that we have done can be applied back into how we make sense of the data coming from these systems, which can then be made accessible and scaled across your whole environment. And it begins to then become accessible and relevant for schema registries and how others are seeing whatever is coming in from the factory, right? Or a shop floor of some kind. This is also the layer where there are already specialized integrations or open standards based integrations, depending on the vendor we are talking about. So think about iPaaS based systems, you think about event brokers. There are integrations available, some out of the box, some you'll have to build. But ERP integrations, maintenance systems, all of that is happening at scale here. Now, sort of embedded with that, or very, very accessible to this environment, or at least you know, integrable with a certain purpose, is this idea of an agent mesh. And what the agent mesh is doing is it's essentially a layer that makes the event broker useful, the event mesh useful to agents. And each agent has a certain special capability. I mean, some are ephemeral, some are permanent, some are of a coordination type. But the big idea is that agents get to figure out and coordinate what action needs to be taken, and that action can then be derived or enabled or implemented perhaps thanks to the event mesh that reaches into the whole system. And for it to be able to make sense, and also I keep repeating this because it's important, it's bidirectional. You are going down the stack here, and you're also going up the stack at scale. So in here is the ability to standardize your data. There is unified namespace somewhere in here. But my big point here is that the coordination happening at the agent mesh level makes everything else very conducive to an agentic way of solving problems. And what that looks like, just taking you back here for a second, is to say systems have spoken with each other and given you a very simple action item, a very simple alert via an interface as friendly as Slack. That's just an example I have on here. So to get a little more specific, and I'll show you some of the vendors who bring this to the table. Think of an agent mesh as a place where all these agents are spawned, are plugged. Imagine a business analyst, who's doing all this math and predictions. There's a Hellraiser agent. This is a system that specializes in escalations and flagging issues and finding problems which are not evident to the rest of us. So this is a system which is proactively going through the whole environment and figuring out things and flagging via alerts. One example was this, which was to say, hey, the margins are going down. Nobody's looking at this, but I know it's gonna happen. So who's thinking about a remedy, right? That's the Hellraiser agent here, who could be that component. The orchestrator, right? And these are all sort of standard Google agent-to-agent communication, ADK framework-based components. Orchestrator is the one sort of body that makes decisions of delegation. What do we do now that we have this request come in? I'll show you an example in a minute. And as I mentioned, right, there are already players who have some of these capabilities rolled out. One of the ones I have experimented with a bit is Solace Agent Mesh. It is open source, so available on GitHub, installed locally. And as you can see here, right, there's multiple components, some gateways into third-party interfaces like Slack. You could choose which LLMs to plug in. What I'm doing, for example, is I have Llama for embedding. I have for sort of general queries and LLM-based work. I use Gemini in the cloud so that you can choose your mix of doing things. And that's perhaps an important one to think about. You're not tied into, if you choose a framework like the one I'm showing you now, you're not tied into one type of a tool, right, or one LLM. And that's flexibility, perhaps, thinking about when you architect your systems. Highbyte today already offers a tooling which is MCP native. Let's just call it that. I don't know what the accurate term might be, but I'll show you in a minute here how they are exposing pipelines and connections, all that information, and how to manipulate tags and topics, etc., or browse them all via MCP. And I'll show that to you in a second. And it looks like this might be an error unless I'm not aware what MPC might be, but yeah, I think it might be a typo. So something I can flag to them for sure. All right, all that said, let's look at what the agent mesh, Solace agent mesh, looks like on the inside. So very easy to follow instructions. I'm showing you the cursor IDE in which I'm playing around with this. Really straightforward, might look complex, but I can promise you there's nothing super crazy going on here. So I have the main orchestrator agent, and I'm showing you this because this is where you instruct and prepare this thing to do something, right? You're instructing it to deal with any problems which will be incoming, and that demo is coming in a minute here. You are telling it how to deal with that problem, and you can completely change this. This is how I have it. In fact, this is how it came right out of the box. Then I built a Slack bot, which was again pretty straightforward. You just enter some details and information about your implementation. And of course, there's always going to be things to tweak and optimize for your needs. But here again, I'm giving it a purpose, giving it instructions. The one specific custom agent I created was this guy, the data ops plugin. This is the Highbyte MCP tool, right? This is where I'm, or I should say, this is the config file. This is where you specifically bring in the MCP tooling and I'm using the streamable HTTP type. Um, so yeah, so this is this, and you'll see it in action in a minute as to what this is worth and why do it. So yeah, that's pretty much it, right? You go in here to add some information about which LLM you want to use and so on, and then from that point onwards, you can switch to the UI, and there's a UI that comes in this shape. So running locally, and I can see both my agents here, the orchestrator, which is like the orchestrator, and then the specific agents. If you want to see the full list, here it is. This is the agent card, which has all the capabilities, etc., listed out, what it does, how it does it, etc., etc. But let's start here. I'm gonna try and see um, something here. What MQ? Let's ask, what can you do? Okay, so here you see, right? It can delegate tasks to specialized agents like this. So it makes sense of an argument. And when I say makes sense, you can imagine that it depends on the quality of LLM that you have plugged in the backend. So those tweaks are possible. You can choose what LLM and how much of a context window you want to set and so on. So those things you can do to improve the results. But for now, let's just stay on this theme. Okay, so I'm gonna ask it about MQTT operations, right? That's the world I've lived in long enough. So let's see, MQTT operations can you do? And uh, okay, I can go check. Could you describe your operation of interest? I can go talk to the data ops controller agent for sure. So I'm like, can I browse topics? Okay, it's delegating the request to data ops. And something I love seeing is this workflow, right? You can see what it's doing, what it's thinking, the workflow. It's going slower than it usually does. And I kind of know why. Okay, I think yeah, I need to reset my trial here. So I think we'll have to try the request again because that tool may not have worked. So can I browse MQTT topics? Let's see what we get back. Oops. Yeah, let's see. Okay, so here we go. You can see this thing. Okay, I think it is possible. Okay, tell me what's possible for MQTT then. Let's see. Oh yeah, right. So this was not the smartest answer. So again, as with everything AI, there's reasons for us to keep improving, tweaking, and finding that sweet spot of okay, what's the way to get the best outcomes. Okay, so that said, um, yeah. So that said, right, you can see all this, but where I find this to be more, I guess, enterprise relevant, enterprise friendly is, for example, this thing here, right, Slack interface. And I'm going to ask the same question again. I did that a little while back, so let's see how this goes now. What MQTT operations can you do? So this is a Slack bot within my Slack environment. In this case, something I created here temporarily. But I'm speaking with or chatting with the same orchestrator agent. So it's going to go check out a few things, and it's telling me the specific tools. And this is all happening thanks to the MCP integration. And yeah, depending on how you implement, you could of course be doing more. So let's see what is going on the Highbyte end. So this is all thanks to the MCP capabilities inside of Highbyte. You can go in and enable that for specific connections, specific pipelines. So here you have now the option to engage and deal with these. And I don't have this set up properly just yet to do some of this, and my technical skills might be not there yet to freely play around with this. But you can see just on a high level, right? You have a bunch of connections which are available to play with. OPC UA to MQTT. This is Highbyte into MQTT. So I'm connected via a cloud-based broker here. Yeah, so all of that. But this is again thanks to MCP that that we can do this. So yeah, so all in all, just to wrap this up, the idea that you can have a bunch of agents, and I showed you an example of an orchestrator talking to a Slack bot via plugin in an agent, more so. Same idea here. You could have a business analyst doing complex math. You could give it access to that tool. This specific business analyst will need information from these different applications, and this is where the event mesh can integrate into SAP PIPO, for instance, and things along those lines, where they need information from the factory floor. Now, this is live, real-time, grounded data. There's no post-facto analysis happening on, okay, how much money are we going to lose this month on this particular maintenance issue? No, it's something you can predict. You can deal with that much better. So that's the power of agentic, and I hope the example I walked you through was helpful. My goal is to actually build out the proper end-to-end view at some point, but just wanted to make sure I put this one out and get any thoughts and feedback from all of you friends out there. Thank you.